Well, welcome again to another episode of Wrestling Wednesdays. I am delighted and slightly terrified of the guests this week. It's a double whammy of minds that we're going to be exploring, amazing careers to look into, and some very exciting matches upcoming. It's the Lady Macbeth of wrestling and Overkill. This is Haskins. It's Vicky Haskins and Mark Haskins. Hello, guys. How you doing?
Hi, we're good. How are you?
Oh, yeah, as I say, I'm slightly terrified. Like the last time I saw you both in person was the match with Rhino in my hometown of Lincoln for 1PW. So I'm still scared of you both since then.
That was fun. Oh, I love Rhino. He was just so much fun to work with. He's awesome. Yeah, that was a good match.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, he's a lovely guy as well. It's nice when there's a veteran like that that's been around for a while and isn't a complete arsehole. It's it's quite a delight.
When you find someone who's given all the reasons to hate the business, but they're still a positive person, it's like, shining light.
I aspire to have that level of optimism when I'm as old as he is. You know, it's
maybe he's just got hit in the head too many times.
Yeah, maybe he's just delusional. Maybe that's it.
As we all are.
Well, it was an incredible match. It was a hell of an atmosphere. I mean, we could delve into the issues of 1PW, but from an atmosphere point of view,
here all night.
Yeah, exactly. But from an atmosphere point of view, and for the way you worked that match, it was brilliant. It got everyone involved. Everyone was riled up. You know, people were very excited to see Rhino, but that you guys found a way to break hearts that night.
As we always do. It's most fun.
Yeah, man, I'm just gutted more than anything that 1PW ended the way it did, because, you know, I think everybody who was on board from the first show, like they stepped into the Doncaster Dome or even the what's it called? The shed?
Engine shed, yeah.
Engine shed, that was it.
The shed.
The shed. Yeah, the shed at Lincoln. Everybody who stepped in, like straight away said, this isn't like an indie, this is like a big time deal, you know, like it genuinely felt like it had the power and the momentum to really make shockwaves, and I'm just gutted it ended the way it did.
Yeah, it's a real shame. It did feel like it was a good opportunity to get so many strong talents from the UK together. Obviously had a few imports, but it had that kind of feel that everyone, like you say, everyone wanted to get behind it, but unfortunately it kind of rocked a few issues, and yeah, unfortunately, will disappear for a while again. I'm sure, you never know. I'm sure they'll try and make a comeback in.
Again.
Yeah. So another book will come out.
Back from the dead again. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we won't delve into that too much, but obviously there are some fantastic matches of yours online. People can watch on YouTube with your main event with Rob Van Dam from 1PW. I don't know if the Rhino one's out. I'm sure it is on demand somewhere. But I mean, it's incredible things, incredible atmospheres and crowds to get. So fully recommend people checking them out, along with your who's who of wrestling history, really, I suppose, that you've competed with over the years. You know, the likes, obviously we mentioned Rhino, but if you think of ECW and WWE, you always think of the Dudleys, and you think of Bully Ray and your time with him in Ring of Honor. What was it like having such a nice, friendly wrestle with him?
Would you call it friendly? I mean, yeah.
Polite.
It was very odd, because it was a family show, and yet they booked this Extreme Rules match where there's barbed wire and ladders and all sorts of shenanigans, and
no swearing, no blood.
Yeah, you're not allowed to swear or bleed, and it was such a weird situation when you look back at it, right? So like,
that magic.
Yeah. No one realizes this, right? But in the state of Baltimore, you have the Maryland Athletic State Commission, right? And you have this in certain states in America where the Athletic Commission has been involved since probably pre-80s, you know, maybe 70s or even before. Like it's and they have strict rules, rules such as there's no blood allowed to occur on a show. So when you're being power bombed off the top rope through a barbed wire table, you know, there's not many.
Please.
Yeah, like, I mean, a lot of people, it's very hard to see. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I've actually got a scar on this finger here.
It's tiny.
It's tiny, and it came from me crawling my way out of the wreckage, slicing my finger open and bleeding, right? This scar cost the company the best part of 20 grand, because the Athletic State Commission came down hard and said, hey, look, we're going to fine you because we said there's no blood to happen, right, on this show. And Joe Koff, the then owner of Ring of Honor, to his credit, picked up the bill for the lot. He said, look, they've said that they want to find you, they want to find Bully, and they want to find the company, but we asked you to put this match on for us, right? So you're not going to pay a single penny of it. We're going to, pay the fines, but we need you to sign this agreement, basically taking a slap on the back of the wrist and being, basically saying like, yeah, it was my fault. You accept blame,
not to bleed again.
Yeah. Promise it's never going to happen again. Wink, and kind of move forward from there. So
this industry's insane.
It's mad. It's absolute madness, and it happens in a lot of states. You have to have medicals done beforehand. You have to, and especially as well, like a lot of the medicals that you have to have, you can't actually get in the UK. So you can only have done while you're there. And each state, that still has an athletic state commission might have its individual rules. Like in New Orleans, when we did that years ago, they were like, nobody can leave the ring over the top rope. And it's like, well, Will Ospreay's on the show and I'm wrestling him, like, what are you expecting? But like the guy, I remember the guy in New Orleans was pretty sound. He was just like I don't care, just crack on. Well, no one's going to pay attention anyway. But yeah, the guys in Baltimore, they weren't as kind and as generous, and they sure wanted to spank us for the naughty bleeding that we did.
That's a hell of a challenge. Wow.
They did before the match. Obviously, we said there's barbed wire involved, and we're not allowed to get blood, seen by the fans, or the cameras especially have to be hidden from it. And obviously, the first thing I did in that match was just go face first into a board of barbed wire. So I'm going on the floor, going, I can't bleed, I can't bleed. And before the match, I explained this to the guys, going, there is a chance this could happen. Do you guys have any bandages? Stuff that I can put on to hide the blood if it were to happen. And the guy went away and then came back with these two tiny, they might as well have like princesses on them, plasters, and went, there you go. And I honestly, at that point, didn't know what to say.
Yeah, and then he left right before the match. So we were like, okay, so if we do like die here, no one's gonna save us. Wrestling,
but we had two plasters, and those two plasters did help. So
it came out looking like Nelly.
I should have done that. Oh, that would have been brilliant.
Sorry.
Next time in Baltimore, you can plan ahead for this.
You cannot bleed in Baltimore. You cannot bleed in Baltimore.
Not allowed.
No.
Strange for a state that's the home of the program The Wire, that's all about gangsters and crimes, that you can't bleed in Baltimore. There you go. That's a name for a promo for you. No, bleed in Baltimore. There's an event there.
So true.
Yeah, you need to get another T-shirt onto the amazing list of T-shirts that you've got, which we'll make sure we mention in a little while. Obviously, before I talk about any more matches, I was quite curious about your collaboration. Obviously, from a wrestling ring point of view, like I mentioned to you when I reached out, it fascinates me that you've created this amazing sort of valet manager style connection with the wrestler that isn't as seen these days. There's only a handful of people that do it, but it works so well with you. I know obviously it's a real life marriage as well as a wrestling character thing, but it still works so well, and you managed to get all the heat, or you managed to do whatever you needed it. Where did that sort of start from? Is it just because you just traveled together and worked together, or was it something you thought this would really work as a character development for us?
I don't know. I mean,
well, I've managed before, so like I've been in and out of the business about 19 years, so I've managed a few people before, but I think you do have to have that relation, or not that relationship with someone, but I think you have to have a very close relationship. And obviously he's my husband, but he's my best mate as well. And obviously we have this love of wrestling, and we've both been in it individually. And it got to a point where it was Progress 2017. And I had just got the bug again. I mean, I had watched, the women's division grow, and it was Ginny actually who I was talking to, and I was like, oh, I don't want to wrestle, but I like that spotlight's calling me. Like I have this like this bitch inside of me that needs that.
Needs channeling.
She needs channeling. And it got to a point where it really did need channeling, and you started working with Jimmy, and I loved, everything that Jimmy did and everything he brought to the business. And I thought, you know what, I want to work with these people, but I mean, when you work for a promotion, you can have ideas, but it has to be the promoter's idea. Otherwise, shit's not going to happen.
That's the problem, is you can describe an idea to somebody, but the idea, that the way I see it, isn't going to be necessarily the same way that you see it. So yeah, as we found across the years, a lot of the time you have to kind of approach promoters rather than with an idea and be like, this is the best idea ever, you need to get on board, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to be shut down. You have to kind of let it linger more, like, but if we just added 2 and 2 together, what would that be? You know, and then let them take it from there. And yeah, it was what, 2017, wasn't it? It was
September.
Yeah.
I don't know what chapter, but it was in
it was Alexandra Palace. Yeah.
And you were having because you had teamed with Jimmy, and then you had a feud with him that basically was going to come off to this match, which was the death match.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we thought this is a good introduction. And I remember being backstage and waiting at kind of like Progress's version of Gorilla, and John, who obviously was like the Progress monster behind the scenes, like he ran everything, he just turned to me and went, "He's a woman, Vic." And I was like, yeah. So that's kind of how I booked myself on Progress. I mean, I'm not going to give you a choice now. I'm going out, and it's either going to flop or it's just going to, you know, we'll spark a little bit of interest. Thankfully, it sparked a bit of interest.
A bit of interest. And the next show, I turn up and they had no plans for me and all these plans for her. And I was like, what happened? We were meant to be working together.
Shiny new toy.
I know, right? But yeah, it happens like that sometimes. But no, I think that I mean, I you know, worked with managers in the past, but obviously nobody who I was intimately involved with. I wasn't intimately involved with Gilligan Gordon.
It's a lie. You loved it.
But basically, yeah, we I think just at some point, didn't we decided, you know what, why don't we just work together? Let's do some stuff. You know, like Vic was coming with me a lot to the shows anyway. She got a bug for it. She said she would never be involved in wrestling again, and then I came along and fucked that all up for her. So yeah, and then at that point she got a bug for it. And madly enough, like when we were both, you know, kids, my favorite was Triple H and Vic's favorite was Stephanie, and we were like, well, you know,
let's just play that game.
Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. I kind of felt like in a weird way we would be doing 12-year-old versions of ourselves a disservice if we didn't, you know, at least try. And you know, within a year or two, Vic was booked with me literally everywhere. It was during that sort of 2017, 2018 sort of boom period during British wrestling, and yeah, we've been here, there, and everywhere ever since.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's worked so well, and it obviously, like I say, it's always a hot atmosphere when you come out. People are really excited in a mostly the time trying to boo you kind of way, but they're excited to see you because they know something good's going to happen. Not only
dude, it's so hard to gauge. Like there was a time at OTT when they really wanted us to be bad, and I was like, right, after tonight, there's no turning back. Like we're gonna go out there and we're gonna be assholes.
Which match was this?
With Charlie Sterling.
Oh, yes.
Like we go out there and I jump him on his entrance from behind. I beat him up with a steel chair. Vic calls him all the names under the sun, and everybody's cheering us. And I was like, we couldn't have tried any more to have been an arsehole.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, yeah, do it. Do you know what I mean? And we're like, oh man. And then there's times where we go out there and we're like, oh, we're going to be like love tonight. And then we go out and boo.
Yeah.
Yeah, gore the horn.
As long as they make noise, I don't really mind. We can work things out when we're out there. That's no problem. If you go out to crickets, that's when you're like.
That is the worst thing. Yeah. I would rather there be some noise than no noise. Do you know, like the worst thing you can have is just to go out there and everyone be like,
it's so awkward. As a performer, you have to carry on. You can't just go, what the fuck you doing? Cheer. you want to have that awkward moment of like, you guys should be louder. Come on, guys, help me out. But like, you have to just keep performing, keep going, like at the volume that you would usually go at, in the vain hope that they kind of come up. I mean, it's happened to everyone, but yeah, it's not fun when it does.
No, but with you two, like the reactions are always great. Whenever I've seen you, it's always been hot. No matter what, it's always been good, and people are genuinely excited. They know what they're in for. An incredible match, whoever it's going to be with. They also know there's going to be some sort of interaction at some point in the match that's going to kind of get a reaction to it as well. So yeah, then they get two amazing personalities for the price of one ticket. So it's great. It's great. Not too bad. While we're talking about Progress, obviously, because you mentioned that Progress is where it all started from, I have to ask what it was like working at Wembley with Riddle. I mean, that was a hell of a crowd to be working in front of. And yeah, I mean, that is available on YouTube for people to watch, and they should watch it because it is an adrenaline filled match. It's very, very physical, but incredible. Such a great story to tell. What was that match like to work?
Yeah, I mean, so the night before we had a show in Hull, and as we were driving down, we got a flat tire. So by the time it got fixed and we finally got to the hotel, we got to the hotel at like 7 a.m. and then got like an hour's sleep and then had to go and do the biggest show of the year. So it was like, at that point, I think by the time my music hit, I was just delusional because I was so tired and like jacked up on Red Bull.
And we had like 45 minutes sleep.
Yeah, if we were lucky. So it was, it was a tough one, but it was, I mean, it was good. It was one of these things where I was like, look, I'm wrestling Matt Riddle in his last match before he went off to WWE, you know, and I got to wrestle him a bunch, but never in front of a crowd of that size, that caliber, with that kind of momentum behind the match. So yeah, it's just one of those things where you just suck it up and get on with it. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I love wrestling Riddle. I think he's great in the ring. And yeah, I'm so glad that we got to enjoy that moment in the ring together. And yeah, got to see got to open up the show for everyone. It was
in that venue as well. Like that venue was amazing. Like there's probably one of my favorite bits of the night, and look, I think you captured it, is I'm backstage and I'm just peeking through the curtain. And it's just like thinking of all the bands that I know that have performed there, and the people that we were on the show with who have now gone on to great lengths. And it's such an awesome moment when you have that just to yourself, just quiet, but you're observing what you're about to go out into, and you can see the hustle and bustle of the crowd and the merchandise going everywhere. And it's just like, oh my God, it's like Christmas morning. It's like a little preview of Christmas morning for me. I love it. It's just...
Yeah, I remember I went to a show there years ago. It was a WWE Raw taping. And I was sat at the very back, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, one day I want to wrestle here. And since then I've done it 3 times. And it was only after, I think, the second time that I was remembering a story that Mick Foley had told about where he'd gone to Madison Square Garden, he'd hitchhiked there, and he finally got to wrestle there, and it meant something to him. And I was like, man, I wish I had that. And I was like, where was that venue that I went to see WWE? I was like, oh, it was Wembley ESSE. Oh, I've already done that twice. So it's like, yeah.
We nearly hitchhiked to that venue.
Yeah, so it was nice to do it under the understanding, oh, this is actually, this has more meaning now I realize where it is and what I'm doing here. So it was awesome. And I really feel that's kind of like where Progress was really like in its prime. You know, it was where it was
special.
Yeah, it was killing it, and it was just such a man. Like what I would give to be able to recreate that time now. You know, like the buzz, the boom of the industry, the caliber of talent that you had on the shows. Like you look back at those shows now and you think, this is insane. You know, you had guys like Pete, like Tyler, like not Trent, but you had like guys like Walter and Riddle and like
anyone but Trent
and Ospreay, and you had these guys who are wrestling each other regularly, and they've all gone on to become megastars in this industry. It's I really think that it was a time that we took for granted.
Yeah, massively. It was very magical, and it's just incredible when you look back now. Even people that travelled over to the UK to wrestle, like obviously the likes of Kevin Owens and so on. It was just every card when you look back now for Progress, Rev Pro, or anyone else. You're like, God, they're all the people you saw, and you saw them in this venue with like 100 people or 500 people or 1,000. Yeah. I mean,
I remember seeing Will Ospreay versus Adam Cole in front of maybe like 500 people, and you think like that was in Sheffield. That was when I was out with neck issues, so I was I was an agent backstage, and Adam Cole and Will Ospreay wrestle each other, and you think like that match now is like money. Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's it is mad when you look back and you think like of all the matches that did take place that should really be taking place in front of much bigger stages, and
now they will.
Yeah, but even your matches as well. Like there should all be, you look at your list of Adam. You've got yourself and Adam Page. You've got, like we mentioned earlier, the stuff in the UK with Rhino and Rob Van Dam, obviously. But then even the British guys like Gabe Kidd up in North, and the Impact match with Leon Slater, and those matches in Newcastle should be a much, much bigger. I know they were good crowds, but they're like mega matches for fans like myself.
Dude, like, you don't even know the half of it. Like, I found a couple of DVDs the other day where it was Malachi Black and myself versus the Young Bucks in Germany in like 2009.
Wow.
There was also myself versus Sami Zayn versus Malachi Black in a triple threat match. And you think, like, if you imagine these matches now, do you know what I mean? Like, there's another one from an early Progress chapter, I think it was chapter 9, where it was like Ricochet, Zack Sabre, and myself in a 3-way. And you think, like, like that would be sick now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was great at the time, but it was, it was like, if only you could do a, like, okay, now it's time to update your version sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It would be,
that would be good.
Yeah, it would be great.
But I suppose that's the exciting thing, isn't it? With the fact that you've got, you've had such an incredible career already, and it's nowhere near ending. You've got a very long road ahead of you, and there's an opportunity for people as they come in and out of different promotions to revisit those sort of matches, and you've got a bit of backstory there. So at any moment, you could delve into something and have a bit of heat. You could find a way to create an angle around it, and I think that's the beauty of how you approach things anyway. I mean, I think there's always a story behind what you're doing. Quite curious actually, because you mentioned about this. How are you finding the new Progress ownership and working for them now, and how they're trying to get back to that level of being at the same level as what Progress was before the pandemic, I would say?
They've really lost their way, because they don't supply us with energy drinks anymore. They give us breadsticks, and it's horrendous.
Breadsticks.
Awful.
God bless them. They have got hearts of gold. They're lovely, and they give us unusual amount of breadsticks at shows, but we applaud them.
You can't get fired up on breadsticks and then go and get drops on your head. Do you know what I mean?
I've got gluten intolerance, so they can be used as a weapon against me. That's why they're doing it. It's a conspiracy.
Maybe I wanted to do that with Mark.
Let's make her really bloated and angry.
Mark Andrews, by the way, has a terrible nut allergy, and I'm always terrified that I'm going to open like a bag of nuts and kill him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
if you work him, I'll just eat them ringside and
but I've also been tempted. I should have a death match where I smear like peanut butter on the mat and try and pound my balls with something. Like,
you will die. Death match. Took it way too literally.
Yeah, no, the new Progress, in all seriousness though, like, what I see is, I see a group of people who care about the product. I see a group of people who are investing, that are taking the measures that they can in order to make sure the Progress survives, because I think a lot of companies, even before the pandemic started to fold, like, if you look at, say, like 2017, 2018, everything was booming and going great, and then like certain companies changed. I think they whether they changed in management or they took a different route, a lot of those companies folded, and it is very unfortunate. Like, back then it's mad. You have guys like What Culture doing like regular Wednesday nights and drawing 2,000, 5,000 people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it now, especially in the days just after the pandemic. I think a lot of us were terrified of, like, is this, like, how long is this going to take to crawl back to like a good standard? But I got to say this about RevPro, is like the first RevPro where they did it was the first York Hall, and it was packed out. It was like, there's light here. Do you know what I mean? There's hope, because there was, we're back. It didn't feel like we'd fallen that far away if we could get back to that point relatively quickly. I think they only started doing shows again around July, and by September or October, I believe it was, that they were back at York Hall and packing it out. So it was like, okay, there's hope here. And then every company since then has continued to build momentum by the looks of things. Like,
continually better themselves. I think a lot of people were scared to return to wrestling shows, not the wrestlers themselves, I don't think, but I think the fans, because of all the hubbub that went on during the pandemic. And obviously during the pandemic, people change as people as well. We're all going to psychologically change, but they'll get into new things. If they're not into wrestling, they'll be into they've rewatched like Orange Is the New Black 50 times and they're now into that. I think a lot of people who wanted to return were a little bit apprehensive, because they just didn't know, is this a safe place? Is this still fun? And it's like, it is. It needed everyone to just have that first kind of couple of shows back to go, oh, okay, no, everything's still, everything's still good, even better. It's a good place to be. When I'm not a bad person for coming to a wrestling show, you know what I mean? And it's gaining that confidence again, because wrestling fans are, they're timid creatures. Like, you notice at shows, if you have the lights on full blast, if the music isn't loud enough, they won't come out of their shell. You need to like coax them. And I think going back to old Progress, that's what they really capitalized on. They understood the fans. They understood that they needed a safe environment. They needed it to be, you know, a grungy rock club is just perfect because no one goes to a wrestling show looking pristine apart from Ginny. She always looks fantastic, but she's just 1 million anyway. But they want to be grungy, they want to feel comfortable, they want to feel like they've just got off their sofa, and this is where they're watching it in the comfort of their second home rather than a venue. And with the Electric Ballroom, well, obviously starting at the garage, but then moving on to the Electric Ballroom, you're really able to kind of capitalize on that and bring everyone out of their shell and go, this is okay, this is a safe place. You can get drunk, you know, you can speak to your friends. We're all a bit fucking weird.
Yeah.
And we
it's in the middle of Camden. Like,
it's in the middle of Camden. It's
yeah.
fine. If you don't fit in the world, you'll definitely fit in here. Yeah. And I think that was just such a momentous kind of thing for Progress as a company. And obviously other people, you know, they found their own way as well. They found their own venues and the way to kind of like that, make it more cozy, make it more inviting for people kind of to feel and have the confidence to, you know, express themselves as much as possible. Because that's what we want out of fans. If you're all silent, like we said before, it's like, this is awkward. Yeah. Someone speak. But yeah, no, they really capitalized on that.
Yeah, well, that's why it's important to, you know, when they put the venue together, also put the card together. There's got to be something that attracts people. If it's the first time going, and I've always found it interesting, the difficulty of trying to tell sort of a story when there's no previous story to it. Literally, it's to turn up on the day. It's just people that are fighting. How do you get that heat? How do you get that connection? And it's all down to you, the way you know, the way you work a crowd, the way when you come out, what the reaction is, the way you, like you mentioned earlier, that you're very good at reacting when you're out there, depending on what the crowd's like. And that's the beauty of it. If you go to pro wrestling for the first time, you know that you're in safe hands with guys like yourselves. If they see you on the card, you're like, right, at least I know I'm going to be able to get involved in some way, even if I don't know anything about the history of this. So that's the beauty of it. And that's why, as I say, I'm a proper geeky fan of yours. So I love it.
Thank you, man.
Speaking of, obviously,
I feel like that's where the alchemy, that's where the beauty of wrestling is creating something out of nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that too often, if people don't create something, it's just because they're too boxed in their own mind, right? Like wrestling, in my mind at least, is art, right? Yeah. So, you know, the only restrictions are the restrictions that you really put on yourself, other than time restrictions or, you know, oh, no swearing, you're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z because you're in a certain type of show. But no, it is about, you know, you got to make people care, because at the end of the day, you know, if people don't care, that's when you get them sat on hands. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, people can point fingers and say like wrestling's this, wrestling's that, whatever, right? Everybody loses their mind when they hear glass shatter, right? Like it's a case of like, you know, suspending disbelief. It's not necessarily making people think it's real, it's making people forget that it's not. And if you can get captivated by a moment, if you can get drawn in by the characters, if you can just feel something, if you can relate to somebody, then that moment alone stands so much more stronger than, you know, than anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like I always say this to young aspiring wrestlers in terms of making people care, is that wrestling, the industry is based on emotion. Like if I was to say to you, I'm sorry, I love you, what comes next in the sequence? Super kick, right? How many super kicks have you seen? And how many are as memorable as that one, right? Do you remember the start of the show where, what's his name? Johnny Nitro Monoxide? Johnny, John Morrison, right? He's had so many different names. I'm trying to remember. So John Morrison, right? He hits a moonsault holding a ladder onto 10 guys to the outside of the ring, right? Like no one remembers it because there wasn't, I know, because I use it as an example. And that's the only reason why I remember it. But like so many people don't remember that moment because there's no emotion behind it. And that's where you have to start thinking, is how can you get people to be emotionally connected to this moment? Do you know what I mean? Like I think that we're seeing it a lot at the moment in WWE. Do you know what I mean? It's The Rock came back. Everyone was like, oh, he's going to be a big baby face. The fans were like, no, we want Cody. And The Rock was like, cool, I don't care. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, cheer me or boo me, I don't care, as long as you react in some way. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think a lot of people sometimes it's fragile egos. Do you know what I mean? And they don't want to be booed, or you know, they're not happy being booed. It's like,
I love getting booed.
Yeah,
I much prefer people booing me. If you're at a show and you don't know what to do, just boo.
Yeah, just default go to boo.
Yeah, just call me every name under the sun. I love it. It's just, it means I'm doing my job. It's like, yay, well done, Vicky, you did good. If you're like, oh, you're amazing, I'm like, great, up the more. But it's, yeah, I prefer being booed, don't you?
With the disclaimer underneath of only at a show though, not in public. Not
in public.
You walk down the street.
In public anyway, I'll start mouthing off at you.
If you boo me while I'm shopping at Tesco, I'm probably not gonna be. I'm
gonna be confused.
Well, yeah, but
no, I've got more collector card points than you. Hey. Yeah, the wind up. There you go. There you go. The
worst thing you can be is forgotten. Do you know what I mean? Like if people cheer, if people boo, they're responding, they care in some way. And that, I think, is the most important part of wrestling, is you have to make people care, even if it's a match that you've had for the first time. I remember another match I had, it was myself and Adam Cole versus Project Ego, Martin Kirby and Chris Travis, right? And we were in Sheffield, it's Trav's hometown. And because Adam... No, it was a Tidal show, I believe. They ran a tour, and
really?
Yeah. Oh, this was like 2013. Yeah, it was the end of 2013.
So I was looking after Jack.
Yeah,
that's why I don't remember any of this, because all I thought at that time was baby.
So we were in a tag match, and Adam Cole and I started to make jokes that because we looked like we could play twin magic, right? So like we kept rolling in and out, and behind the referee's back, and yeah, like the ref was like, "You're Haskins, get out of the ring." And even the crowd were in on it. They were like, "No, that's Adam Cole." I was like, "No, I'm Adam Cole. Look, Adam Cole, baby." And then everyone joins in. And it's creating that fun. It's creating that environment. And like a lot of the time, the more intimate shows are the shows better to do that, because people are more likely to let their hair down, have a little bit of fun, and just kind of, engage with the crowd more. And it's, I wish that's the one criticism I would have of this younger generation from what I've seen, is they're almost timid. Like it's in a lot of ways, it's better to be reined in than trying to be pushing somebody to go further, do you know?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I appreciate we're probably nearly out of time on this one, but I'd love to do a follow-up at some point and quiz you a bit more about sort of NCL and the likes of IWN, and see what your thoughts are on those promotions that you're working on at the moment. Before we go though, in terms of people obviously following on socials, I'll put the links underneath. Have you got anything coming up match-wise that you want to just promote from sort of Easter onwards?
About it. Like literally all of our matches, we've been told not to announce anything until it's been announced, so we can't.
Just keep watching our socials.
Yeah, and we'll pop up somewhere.
We will, magically.
Well, there's loads in the meantime, there's loads of people to watch on YouTube, and as I say, get hold of your socials and get involved. I'll put a link under there as well for the amazing store that you've got. I have ordered the t-shirt, it's on the way. I can't wait for some of the new ones you've got coming out as well. Very creative designs. But genuine, honestly, just great to get to speak to you for the first time tonight, and not be so scared behind the ring of having to worry about if you're going to kill me if I boo you halfway through a match. So it's great. It's a genuine pleasure though. But thank you very much for your time, the wonderful Mark Haskins and Vicky Haskins. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for having us.